The night was bitter cold, the kind that seeps into your bones and lingers long after the wind has passed, and on a dimly lit corner of Lexington Avenue in New York City, beneath the cracked roof of a forgotten bus shelter, a man named Marcus Lane sat hunched over, wrapped in layers of worn-out clothing in quiet resignation, his breath fogging into the frozen air like smoke from a fading fire. He hadn't always been this way. Years earlier, Marcus had lived a life not unlike those who now walked past him with hurried steps and eyes cast downward, avoiding his gaze. Once an operations coordinator for a logistics firm, a man with a steady income, a fiancée named Andrea who laughed like springtime and believed in weekend road trips, and a mother whose phone calls warmed his evenings like fresh bread from the oven, a man who believed, naively perhaps, that if you worked hard and stayed decent, life would reward you. But when the company downsized during a brutal merger, Marcus was let go. Without ceremony or warning, and though he fought to stay afloat, sending resumes, taking freelance gigs, slashing expenses, it wasn't enough, and then, as if fate had sharpened its cruel edge, his mother fell terminally ill, the cancer spreading faster than the doctors predicted, and Marcus, her only son, spent every last dollar trying to prolong her time, to ease her pain, to buy her more mornings, but it wasn't enough. And when she passed, the silence in his apartment became unbearable, as did the bills, and slowly, piece by piece, Marcus's world unraveled. Andrea tried to hold on, bless her heart, but love doesn't always survive grief, and when she left, suitcase in hand, apology in her voice, Marcus didn't blame her, he simply watched the door close and let the emptiness settle in. Soon the eviction notice came, then nights spent on subway benches and afternoons in libraries just to stay warm, his pride dissolving like sugar in the rain, until he stopped counting days and started counting hours, stopped hoping for change and started hoping for quiet. And on that particular night, the cold wasn't just weather, it was weight, pressing down on his chest, slowing his breath, and had he closed his eyes and never opened them again, perhaps no one would have noticed. But fate, mysterious and often gentle when we least expect it, had different plans, and so it was that Elise, a young nurse just off a grueling double shift at the nearby hospital, her eyes lined with fatigue and heart still wide open from the day's pain, happened to walk past, clutching a small bakery box of leftover pastry she'd rescued from the break room, heading toward her car when something about the way Marcus was curled, still, small, forgotten, caught her attention, and instead of walking past like so many others, she stopped, hesitated, then turned, walking back toward him, kneeling slightly despite the icy pavement, and asked in a voice as soft as snowfall, "Hey, are you hungry?" And though Marcus's pride wanted to say no, the ache in his stomach overpowered it, and he nodded, barely lifting his eyes, and Elise offered him the box. "I didn't want these to go to waste," she said, then added, "There's a shelter on 17th Street, nothing fancy, but it's warm, and they'll feed you," scribbling the address on a crumpled receipt and tucking it into the box, and then, as quickly as she had come, she was gone, swallowed by the city's noise and light. But in her wake, she left something powerful, a feeling Marcus hadn't felt in a long, long time, seen, and that small moment, that fleeting gesture of compassion, stirred something dormant within him, and with trembling hands, he opened the box, the pastries inside still warm, buttery, sweet, like a memory from a better time, and after finishing the last bite, he looked at the address again, debating whether to trust, whether to try, and then, for reasons he wouldn't fully understand until years later, he stood up and began to walk toward the shelter, and there, surrounded by the soft chaos of snores and whispered prayers, Marcus found heat, soup, and a cot, and for the first time in weeks, he slept without fear of frostbite or harassment. And in the morning, when volunteers needed help unloading a delivery truck, Marcus raised his hand, surprising even himself, and the man in charge, Frank, a grizzled ex-Marine with a soft spot for second chances, noticed Marcus's quiet efficiency and thanked him with an extra bowl of oatmeal, and that small act became habit. Marcus began showing up early, cleaning floors, organizing beds, guiding newcomers, and over time, Frank offered him a temporary role as an assistant, minimum wage, but meaningful, and Marcus, for the first time in years, had somewhere to be, something to do, and slowly, piece by piece, he began stitching his life back together. And then, during a routine sorting of clothing donations, Marcus found a wallet tucked inside an old coat containing over $700 in cash and an ID card belonging to one Daniel Griggs, and though temptation whispered of motel rooms, hot meals, and clean clothes, Marcus knew what he had to do, and brought the wallet straight to Frank, who raised an eyebrow and said, "You sure about this?" And Marcus simply replied, "I don't want to be the man who keeps it," and days later, Daniel himself showed up, stunned and grateful, explaining that the money was for his rent and that he'd been panicking for days, and when he asked Marcus what he could do to repay him, Marcus shrugged, "Just glad it got back to you," but Daniel, a startup entrepreneur building a logistics platform, couldn't shake the encounter, and returned weeks later with a job offer, warehouse associate, nothing glamorous, but steady work, and though Marcus hesitated, unsure he was ready, Daniel insisted, "I can teach logistics. I can't teach character," and so Marcus took the leap, and in the months that followed, he immersed himself in the work, arriving early, staying late, learning inventory software, coordinating shipments, and earning the trust of Daniel and the team, and eventually, he saved enough to rent a small apartment in Queens, a modest space with peeling paint and creaky floors, but to Marcus, it was a palace, and on the night he moved in, he sat on the floor with a takeout container and cried, not from sadness, but from gratitude, and life, in its poetic rhythm, brought him full circle one rainy afternoon when he delivered a package to a hospital and saw Elise again, now with shorter hair but the same kind eyes, and when he said her name, she turned, puzzled, then gasped, "Marcus," and when he nodded, her face lit up and they embraced, and over coffee in the hospital cafe, he told her everything, the shelter, the job, the wallet, Daniel, and she listened with tears brimming, whispering, "All I did was give you pastries," to which Marcus replied, "No, you gave me dignity," and that night, he wrote in a journal, "One act of kindness can change everything," a phrase that would later become the slogan for the Forward Step, the nonprofit Marcus founded with Daniel's support, aimed at helping the homeless rebuild their lives through mentorship, job training, and transitional housing, and within a year, the program grew from a handful of volunteers to a citywide network, with Marcus sharing his story at shelters, universities, and even on national television, always ending with the same message, "Kindness saved me." A nurse saw a man in the cold and chose to act, not because she had to, but because she could, and at the organization's first fundraising gala, Elise sat in the front row, tears running down her cheeks as Marcus, now in a crisp suit, stood on stage beneath warm lights and said, "I want to thank the woman who gave me more than food, she gave me a future," pointing to her as the crowd erupted in applause, and later, as they sat outside beneath string lights and soft jazz, Elise asked quietly, "Do you ever miss your old life?" And Marcus smiled, "Not for a second, this is who I was meant to become," and in that moment, under the hum of city life and the echoes of applause, two souls who once crossed paths in the cold now sat side by side, forever linked by one small act that rippled into something far greater than either could have imagined, a reminder that kindness is never wasted, never forgotten, and always, always capable of changing a life forever.